P-A-S-C-A-L. You are now rocking with that dude, Pascal.
What's up? We're back at it again with another conversation about the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf case. And it looks like Dominique Alexander, the representative that has been the spokesperson for Karmelo Anthony and Karmelo Anthony's family, has been speaking out. He spoke out again in an interview on News Nation, which we are going to look at here in just a little bit. But what's interesting about this is that just a few days ago, he went on to his own social media accounts and basically put out his own story, his own side of the story of when Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff Metcalf, showed up to their press conference and was allegedly asked several times to leave. And Jeff Metcalf blatantly, flat out just said no. Now, of course, this has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of debate. People have been discussing about this, saying, hey, why can't a grieving father be there? Like you don't know if he was going to do anything bad or not, so on and so forth. There's been quite a bit of a tug of war in regards to this whole thing. And if you saw my video when we did kind of a big video and big conversation about this, Jeff Metcalf fired back at Dominique Alexander and said, you're lying. I was never asked multiple times. As soon as I saw the police show up, I let myself out. So again, it's been a very interesting situation. They've been going back and forth on social media where Dominique has been saying certain things and Jeff Metcalf has been responding to those things. It's been a very interesting situation nonetheless. But then now he comes on to News Nation. He gets an interview by this reporter here, and Dominique Alexander, and he says a few things that I think are very interesting. They talk about if Karmelo Anthony if he has any remorse for what has happened. He doesn't blatantly answer. He doesn't directly answer the question. He kind of maneuvers around it, which is very, very interesting. And I can see why some people are sitting here thinking, oh, that Karmelo Anthony and the family doesn't care. I don't think that's the case. I think they're all of them are going through their own levels of pain and grieving right now, period. But at the same time, it still remains. Is this self-defense or was this straight up M? That's the one thing that I think we're all trying to figure out. But before we get into that conversation, or before we talk a little bit more about this, let's get into this video. I'm going to be jumping in and out of here of the video for the fair use and all that, but and putting in my color commentary. But I think this is a very interesting interview, and we'll talk about that more. Let's take a listen.
This case has become so polarized so quickly. I had the chance to speak with a representative of the Karmelo Anthony family, Minister Dominique Alexander. I asked him about Karmelo Anthony. I asked him about all the questions and the controversy swirling around this tragic case and the recent comparison this man made between Karmelo Anthony and Kyle Rittenhouse. Take a look. Does Karmelo Anthony feel remorse over killing Austin Metcalf?
I've never asked him that question.
Do you have any sense?
I don't know. Have not asked him that question directly. I believe the affidavit expressed what he felt at that moment, and I'll leave it at that.
Now, real quick, everybody, I feel like some people are going to be like, "What?" But hold on, let me say something here really quick. And this is just a theory. I could be completely wrong. Maybe I'm right. I don't know. But given the fact that Dominique has asked such a very specific question, does Karmelo Anthony have any remorse on what happened? And Dominique does not directly answer the question. He just says, don't know. Didn't have a conversation with him. Can't answer that question. He goes, did you get any inkling? Did you get any feeling that he might be, remorseful for what happened here? He says, don't know. Can't say. Whatever's been written in the arrest reports is what happened in the arrest reports. Now, just so you know, in the arrest reports, it is basically very obvious. In one of the officers' reports, they're saying that this kid was bawling, crying uncontrollably. So clearly, there is some sort of remorse here. Okay. Then on top of it, he obviously said, I'm not alleged. I did it. right? He also says, hey, I told him not to touch me. I told him touch me and see what happens. I told him not to touch me, right? So there's all those things in there. And then, of course, he asked the police, would what happened be considered self-defense? Now, some could look at that and say, hey, wait a second. Is he plotting? Is he planning on throwing out self-defense so he can save face? Or is he actually asking because he truly was defending himself? Those are all things that I think we're all going to have to wait for, when it comes to the evidence. But here's the thing. The reason why I think that Dominique did not answer that question directly, it's not because the kid isn't remorseful. I think the kid is remorseful. Clearly from the reports from the police. And that's what he was basically alluding to. You can see in the reports that they said that he was crying uncontrollably, bawling his eyes out when he was getting detained, okay, after this tragic and unthinkable event. I think he wasn't saying and answering that question because he doesn't want this to come back and be used in court. Think about this for a second. If he says that he's remorseful, then that might mean that he knew what he did was wrong, or that he knew that it was M and he's remorseful. You see what I'm saying? So I could see Dominique not saying something out of fear or out of concern for it, out of concern that it's going to come back and be used in court. I think that's what it is. And I could be wrong, but I also think that Dominique is like, I'm not him. I can't speak for him. And I can't speak on certain things that I don't know fully about. But that's the thing, though. It's weird because you'd think that he would know if Karmelo Anthony is remorseful. And I'm hoping that he's remorseful. But you'd think that he would know, Dominique. You'd think that he would know for sure that he's remorseful because he's working very closely with the family, right? So you'd think that he would know how this kid is feeling. Then again, he didn't answer that question. Not in its entirety, but yeah, if you do the research and you read the reports, yeah, on paper, it seems like Karmelo Anthony was remorseful of what happened. But we will see as time goes on, shall we?
Do you believe Karmelo Anthony is innocent even after he admitted this to police?
I believe Karmelo has the right to be able to create the same legal defense that anybody is afforded under these state of Texas laws and Constitution. I believe if Karmelo wants to display his self-defense claim, he should be entitled in a court of law without interference. That's what I believe.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's a fair statement. Absolutely. As an American citizen, he has a right to defend himself. And if he really defend himself in court, I'm sorry. But if he did actually do this in self-defense, then he has every right to show proof positive in court. That's why they say innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Even though in this one, he said he did that. He's not alleged he did it. He outed himself. But we'll see what happens here, right?
Does Karmelo Anthony's family believe he is innocent?
I believe Karmelo Anthony's family wants the process for him to correction. I believe that the Anthony family wants to respect this process and get him prepared for his self-defense claim. I believe the Anthony family feels that, yes, Karmelo Anthony is innocent of this, and they are going to support Karmelo Anthony in this entire process in getting prepared.
Now, of course, the family, like any loving and doting family, is going to believe their son over anybody else. I mean, I feel like that's inevitable. Okay, if your kid was on trial and he came to you sobbing, saying, hey, I was protecting myself and you didn't see any evidence, you didn't see anything else except for what the words that are coming out of your son or your kid's mouth, you're in most of the time, 99.9% of the time, you're going to believe your kid because you would believe that your kid would never do something this bad, right? So of course, the family's going to believe him. Of course. That's what loving parents do. Love their child almost to a fault. Now, of course, if something else shows different, if they the footage shows that he's absolutely attacking Austin Metcalf unwarranted, then I'm sure the family will be singing a different tune. But for right now, no one's seen anything. And I'm wondering if the families have seen any of the footage yet. But, like I said, only time will tell.
Would you agree that the Metcalf family is the victim here?
Any loss of life is a tragedy. Any child that loses his life is a tragedy, no matter the circumstance. That's my answer.
Again, so you see, he's not answering the question. He's not answering the question. He's tap dancing around it. He's tiptoeing around the question with a sort of answer. Why? Because I guarantee you, he's automatically thinking in his mind, they can use this interview in court. They can use this against Karmelo. And if I sit there and say, yes, I believe that Austin Metcalf is a victim, woo! For a fact, they're going to use that soundbite in court. So I see what he's doing here, But then at the same time, in my mind, I'm like, then why agree to do an interview then? If you're just going to tiptoe around the questions, why do the interview in the first place, my brother? That's what I want to know too.
On April 17th, the family of Karmelo Anthony spoke for the first time. But before the press conference began, Austin Metcalf's dad, Jeff, says he was escorted out by police. Mr. Metcalf has said that he came there to pray with the family, but you had him removed.
Like so many other families.
Why?
We wanted to give our children.
I don't know anything about Mr. Metcalf coming to pray about the family. He never expressed that to any of the staff.
You said the father being at this press conference is a disrespect to the dignity of his son. That was disrespectful. Just shows you all the character. He was not invited. You say it was a disrespect to the dignity of his son. Do you want to clarify that?
That was bad.
At that time, I'm not above reproach or whatever. It was high emotions at that time. And this whole notion that only one individual came up to him about it, that's a lie. I don't want to attack this man. We asked him, we tried to, literally this press conference was delayed an entire hour. We asked him to leave several times. They created this issue that literally didn't need to be.
You mentioned...
Hold on. First off, I really wish Dominique didn't say the whole disgrace to your son and thing and all that. I get being upset and not fully understanding why, things being lost in translation and there being a big misunderstanding in this whole situation. But at the same time, he didn't really he didn't have to go there. He really didn't have to go there. That was kind of a low blow, and that's rude, right? But then on top of it, he's not bringing that. He's not even saying, okay, I shouldn't have said what I said there. My bad. But at the same time, this whole situation was going on, and I didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what he was there for. Nothing was explained. We asked him several times to leave. And even so, like I said in my last video where we talked about this, the bigger video, I even said that it's true. On live, the news was even saying that Jeff Metcalf was asked several times to leave, and he was saying no. So again, that is interesting. Jeff Metcalf says it's a lie. Jeff Metcalf says he wasn't asked several times. He was only asked apparently once, and he left, or something of that sort, not several times. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm wondering who's lying, who's telling the truth. You never know. Maybe he doesn't remember being asked several times because he was so deep in grief. Maybe sleep deprived. Maybe he doesn't remember that. Maybe it was just one big blur. I don't know, but it's so strange, right? But let's continue on. Again, he shouldn't have said what he said. Dominique was wrong for that, for what he said on the mic. He didn't have to say that towards the Austin Metcalf's dad. Hell no.
You made a kind of analogy between Kyle Rittenhouse and Karmelo Anthony. Is there anything you want to clarify about what you said It's causing quite an uproar.
Whatever uproar it wants to create, Kyle Rittenhouse displayed this was self-defense. And all my correlation is that if Kyle Rittenhouse said self-defense, Karmelo Anthony has the rights to self-defense.
I spoke with the father of Austin Metcalf, Jeff Metcalf, and while he didn't want to do an on-camera interview to rebut these claims, he did tell me in writing, the truth will come out, justice will prevail.
Okay. Now, of course, Jeff Metcalf is not wrong. The truth will come out. Eventually, the information, the videos, the evidence will prove for itself what really happened, what really went down between Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, and possibly Hunter Metcalf. But we don't know that. That is just something that has been said out here in these streets and has been uttered by Karmelo Anthony's mother during the press conference. We still have no confirmation of that. But one thing that will be confirmed, like I said, is when we get evidence. And he's not wrong. Jeff Metcalf is not wrong. The evidence will prove and show itself. Now, the thing is, with the whole Kyle Rittenhouse comparison and all that, that's one thing I do agree with Dominique Alexander. As soon as Kyle Rittenhouse said, hey, that was self-defense, that's how it was looked at. That's how they proceeded, and that's what they put out there in court. And then they were able to prove self-defense in some sort of way, and that's why Kyle Rittenhouse was exonerated. Now, the same rights that Kyle Rittenhouse has, Karmelo Anthony has as well. I know, whether we like it or not, I know a lot of people are saying boo right now. I get it. But at the same time, he has the same rights just as anybody else in this country. So if he says self-defense, I hope to sweet baby Jesus, the evidence proves as such. But like I said, trial hasn't even happened yet. But of course, the trial has been happening in the town square. And what say you guys? What are your thoughts on this situation? No remorse? I wouldn't say no remorse. I wouldn't say no remorse, but I feel like Dominique was trying to just trying not to answer questions that could be used against Karmelo in trial. But I'm going to say it again like I said it during this video. Why do the interview in the first place if you got to tap dance around a whole bunch of questions? It just feels like it's a waste of time. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Hit that like button down below. Crush that subscribe button. And we'll talk here soon. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. This is The Pascal Show. Bye.
Pascal. You are now rocking with that dude Pascal. We be going wild.